At the main hippodrome, the heart of the empire and number 39's public life, tens of thousands of people gather to witness not only the triumph of the returned emperor, but also of his barbarian ally. Khan Tirvel entered Constantinople not as a mercenary secretly handed a bag of gold through the back gate, but as a true triumphant. Justinian II, true to his word, something rare for Byzantine politicians, staged a grand spectacle. In the middle of the hippodrome, next to the imperial box, stood a throne. The emperor sat on it, his feet on the necks of the overthrown usurpers Leontius and Tiberius, who were awaiting their execution. It was a brutal but understandable demonstration of force for the crowd. But the climax of the day was not the execution, but the awarding. Justinian invited Tirvel to sit next to him, a gesture that for Orthodox Romans bordered on sacrilege. Then followed a scene that forever entered Bulgarian legends and Byzantine chronicles. Justinian bestowed upon Tirvel the title of Caesar, or Caesar. To understand the scale of this event, in the Byzantine hierarchy, the title of Caesar was second in importance after the emperor himself. It was usually worn only by heirs to the throne or the ruler and number 39's closest blood relatives. Never, absolutely never in the history of the Roman Empire was this title given to a foreign ruler, let alone a non-Christian one. This was a tectonic fault in geopolitics. With this gesture, Justinian officially recognized that Bulgaria was not a temporary gathering of barbarians on the Danube border, but a legitimate state, a second center of power in the region. Khan Tirvel practically became the vice-emperor of the Byzantine world. But the title was only part of the reward. Legend has it that Tirvel, wanting to show his greatness and perhaps test the generosity of his ally, stuck his spear into the ground and ordered it to be covered with gold coins until its tip disappeared. Then he threw his battle shield to the ground and demanded that it be covered with gold as well. Finally, he threw down his long riding whip and ordered that it be covered with gold as well. Justinian, intoxicated by the return of power, fulfilled all the demands. Huge caravans of gold, silk, and jewels set out from the imperial treasuries towards the Bulgarian camp. This was the most expensive payment for military aid in the history of that time. In addition to gold and titles, Bulgaria received something that money cannot buy: territory and strategic advantage. Justinian officially handed over the Zagore region, the fertile lands south of the Balkans, to the Khan. This was a key moment. For the first time, Bulgaria crossed the natural mountain barrier, expanding its sphere of influence and gaining direct control over important trade routes. Now, merchants traveling from the north to Constantinople had to pay customs duties to the Khan and number 39's men. The young state and number 39's economy received a huge boost. Pliska began to be filled with Byzantine gold, and Tirvel and number 39's authority among his subjects soared to the heavens. He achieved what even Asparuh could not. He forced the empire not just to fear him, but to respect him. But in this barrel of honey, there was also a spoonful of tar, which Tirvel, as a wise politician, could not help but notice. The title of Caesar, for all its splendor, was also a trap. By accepting it, Tirvel formally entered the Byzantine hierarchy, becoming, as it were, the younger brother of the emperor. In the eyes of Byzantine diplomats, this made Bulgaria a vassal state of the empire, albeit an honorary one. Constantinople hoped to tame, end quote, tame the barbarian, put a golden collar on him, and use him in its own interests. Tervel understood this game perfectly. He accepted the gold, accepted the title, wore the purple robe during the ceremony, but once he returned to his camp, he remained a sovereign Khan. For him, this title was simply a tool of legitimation, a way to raise Bulgaria and number 39's prestige in the eyes of its neighbors, not an oath of allegiance. The ceremony at the Hippodrome became the pinnacle of friendship between the noseless emperor and the Khan. Justinian, who had regained his throne thanks to Bulgarian swords, seemed sincerely grateful. But history teaches us that the gratitude of rulers has a very short shelf life. As soon as the last Bulgarian horseman, laden with booty, disappeared over the horizon, new plans began to ripen in the emperor and number 39's mind. Byzantine pride, wounded by the necessity of bowing to a barbarian, craved revenge. Justinian II, whose madness and paranoia only intensified after his return to power, was already beginning to think about how to reclaim the lands he had been given. Tervel returned home as a victor, the first pagan ruler to receive the title of Caesar. But he knew that peace with the empire was as fragile as the thin ice on the Danube in spring. The holiday was over, and in the distance, the shadow of inevitable betrayal was already looming. 3 years. That and number 39's exactly how long Emperor Justinian and number 39's memory of the great service the Bulgarian Khan did him lasted. In the world of high politics, gratitude is a perishable commodity, and in the Byzantine court, it spoils faster than fish under the summer sun. Justinian II, who had consolidated his power through bloody purges and repressions in Constantinople, once again felt like the all-powerful vicegerent of God on earth. The golden mask hid his disfigurement, but nothing could hide the ugliness of his soul, corroded by pride and paranoia. It became unbearable for him to think that some barbarian, a pagan in beastly skins, bore the title of Caesar and ruled ancient imperial lands in Zagor. Every reminder of Bulgarian aid was like salt in a wound for him, humiliating evidence of his own weakness in the past. In the year 708, the pendulum in the Emperor and number 39's mood finally swung towards war. Justinian and number 39's logic was simple and insidious. Bulgaria had received too much, and the time has come for all of this to be taken back from her. He was confident that his legions, hardened by constant conflict, would easily sweep away Tervel and number 39's horde. The emperor gathered a powerful army, loaded the cavalry onto ships, and headed north along the Black Sea coast to the fortress of Anhialo, today and number 39's Pomori. This was not just a punitive expedition. This was an attempt at full revenge, an effort to humiliate his yesterday and number 39's savior, and show him his place beyond the Danube in the mud and oblivion. But Justinian made a fatal mistake. He underestimated not only Tervel and number 39's military talent, but also the quality of his intelligence. The Bulgarian Khan had no illusions about the brotherly love of the Byzantines. His spies and sentries carefully monitored every movement of the imperial troops. When the Byzantine fleet anchored near Anchialos, Tervel already knew about it. The emperor, confident in his own superiority and impunity, acted with astonishing carelessness. His troops landed on the shore and set up camp without providing sufficient intelligence and security. The soldiers scattered throughout the surrounding area in search of fodder and wine, convinced that the barbarians would flee at the mere sight of the imperial banners. Justinian was probably already anticipating an easy victory, enjoying the sea breeze. But Tervel had no intention of running away. He waited. His army, hidden in the folds of the terrain on the wooded hills around the plain of Anchialos, watched the weakened enemy as a wolf watches a sheep that has strayed from the flock. The Khan chose the perfect moment to strike. When the Byzantines were at their most disorganized, the Bulgarian cavalry descended from the hills upon them like an avalanche. This was not a battle in the classical sense. This was carnage, chaos, panic. The surprise was complete. The imperial soldiers, without even having time to form a battle line, were crushed and swept away. The heavy Byzantine infantry, devoid of support and coordination, became easy prey for the agile Bulgarian cavalry. The cries of terror mingled with the battle cries of the Bulgarians. Justinian, watching the catastrophe from his tent, for a moment lost all his arrogance. He saw his invincible army crumble to dust under the blows of the very barbarians he had come to punish. The battle turned into a shameful flight to the ships. The emperor, forgetting about honor and dignity, was among the first to flee for his life. He barricaded himself in the fortress of Anchialos, and then, under cover of night, cowardly, like a thief, fled with his ship back to Constantinople, abandoning the remnants of his army to the mercy of fate. The victory at Anchialos turned into an icy shower for Byzantium, and a triumph for Bulgaria. Tervel didn't, and #39th, just repel the attack. He showed the whole world that his country was capable of defending itself even against the most powerful military machine of the era. The Bulgarians captured a huge number of prisoners, weapons, and even those horses that Justinian had so recklessly brought down to the shore. But the greatest trophy was moral superiority. The myth of the invincibility of the empire, which Justinian tried to restore, was trampled into the mud by Bulgarian hooves. This battle finally established Bulgaria as a regional superpower. Tervel proved that the title of Caesar is not a gift, a recognition of a reality. They already had to reckon with Pliska and number 39's power. Justinian and number 39's betrayal ultimately turned against him and further shook his throne in Constantinople. And Tervel, watching the departing sails of the Byzantine fleet, understood one thing. This lesson the empire would remember for a long time. He did not set out to pursue the enemy by sea. He had no fleet. But on land, he was the master. Bulgaria resisted, preserved its conquests, and was ready for new trials. And history clearly shows that new trials are never too late. Justinian and number 39's fate was already sealed, but the clouds of a much more formidable storm were gathering on the eastern horizon. One that made the treachery of a mad emperor seem almost child in number 39's play. The wheel of fate that had raised Justinian II so high took its inevitable turn and crushed him. In the year 711, the immortal emperor, who had endured exile, mutilation, and hundreds of conspiracies, finally met death, from which he could not redeem himself with gold or by hiding behind other people and number 39's backs. He was killed by his own soldiers, exhausted by tyranny and endless wars. Justinian and number 39's head, along with that same famous golden mask, was sent to Rome and Ravenna to be displayed publicly as proof that the nightmare was finally over. With his death, Constantinople was plunged into complete chaos. The empire sank into anarchy, resembling a bloody kaleidoscope. Emperors changed so quickly that the mentors barely had time to engrave the new faces on the seals. Philippic Varden, Anastasius II, names that flashed and disappeared, leaving almost no trace until Theodosius III ascended the throne, a humble tax collector whom the mutinous troops literally forced to put on the crown against his will. Khan Tervel watched the agony of the neighboring superpower with the cold calculation of an experienced predator. He understood one thing perfectly well. While Constantinople was torn apart for power, the borders of the empire were open like the gates of an abandoned barn. The Bulgarian ruler wasted no time. His cavalry again invaded Thrace, but this time not to help another claimant to the throne, but to demonstrate strength. The Bulgarians reached the very walls of Constantinople, devastating the wealthy suburbs and instilling terror among the inhabitants of the capital. This wasn't an #39 just looting. This was a harsh political message to the new, weak Emperor Theodosius. I and number 39 am still here. I'm Caesar, and you and number 39 LL have to deal with me. In the year 716, realizing the hopelessness of resistance and the need for peace on the northern border, Theodosius III agreed to sign a peace treaty. This document became a true diplomatic triumph for Tervel and one of the most important agreements in early European history. The Treaty of 1716 was a geopolitical masterpiece that definitively established Bulgaria as a sovereign state. First, the border was clearly defined. Byzantium officially ceded to Bulgaria the strategically important Zagor region, and the borderline already ran along the old earthen ramparts near the city of Miletus. The empire recognized the loss of this territory not as a temporary concession, but as a fait accompli. Secondly, the treaty stipulated an annual tribute. Byzantium undertook to supply the Bulgarian court with expensive fabrics and red silk robes worth 30 liters of gold. But the most revolutionary part of the treaty was the trade clause. Tervel, displaying true statesmanship, won the right for his merchants to trade duty-free within the empire, on one condition: the goods had to be provided with special seals and stamps. This famous rule of the Red Seal effectively created one of the first forms of medieval customs control and protection of state interest. Bulgaria began to integrate into the larger economy of the region, and its treasury was no longer filled only with war booty, but also with revenues from peaceful trade. Tervel gradually transformed his country from a military camp into a wealthy trading power. The treaty also included a clause for the mutual extradition of political fugitives. This was extremely important for Tervel, who wanted to protect himself from internal conspiracies. He understood perfectly well that any disgruntled Bulgarian aristocrat could flee to Constantinople and seek support there, just as Justinian himself had once done. Now, this path was closed. By signing this document, Theodosius III effectively recognized Tervel as his equal partner and guarantor of stability in the region. At first glance, it seemed that the Khan had achieved everything a ruler could dream of: recognition, wealth, and secure borders. But this diplomatic victory was won on the very edge of the abyss. While Tervel and Theodosius divided spheres of influence and discussed trade rules, darkness began to gather on the eastern horizon. making all the intrigues of the Byzantine court seem like children and number 39 squabbles in a sandbox. From the far south, like an unstoppable tsunami, the shadow of the Umayyad Caliphate descended upon Christendom. Arab expansion had reached its peak. The Prophet and number 39's armies had already conquered Persia, Egypt, North Africa, and Spain. Now their eyes were fixed on the golden apple, Constantinople. They were not coming simply to conquer new lands. They were coming to destroy the old world and build a new one on its ruins. The Treaty of 1716, which had seemed like the pinnacle of success for Tervel, would soon prove to be the only thin shield separating Europe from catastrophe. The wind of history was changing direction, and it carried the smell of burning and salty seawater. The summer of 1717 was stiflingly hot, but it wasn't in #39 the heat that made the people of Constantinople break out in a cold sweat. On the horizon, where the blue of the Sea of Marmara usually merged with the sky, a wall of wood and canvas rose. This was not just another raid, as the Byzantines were accustomed to after centuries of war. This was a real apocalypse, embodied in wood and metal. The Great Armada of the Umayyad Caliphate, numbering, according to various estimates, up to 2,500 ships, entered the straits. If you had stood on the city walls that day, you might have thought the sea had disappeared, hidden beneath the hulls of the ships. This was a fleet capable of carrying an entire civilization. And that, and number 39's, exactly what it did. On board were not only soldiers, but also siege engines, food supplies for years to come, and the fanatical conviction that the days of Christendom were numbered. At the head of this colossal force was Maslama ibn Abd al-Malik, brother of the Caliph himself, and one of the most talented generals in the Islamic world. Its ambitions went far beyond simple plunder. The Caliphate did not simply want to humiliate Byzantium, it wanted to obliterate it. In sacred texts and prophecies, the fall of Constantinople was seen as the final chord in the victory of the true faith over the infidels. And the invasion army, which moved overland through Asia Minor and then crossed the Dardanelles into Europe, was fully matched by the size of the fleet, 200,000 men, a number almost unthinkable for the demography of the 8th century. This was a human ocean, multilingual, fearsome, composed of Arabs, Persians, Egyptians, and Berbers, united by a single goal: to remove the cross from the dome of Hagia Sophia and raise the grain flag of the Prophet there. In Constantinople itself, an atmosphere bordering on panic reigned. But at the head of the empire stood a man capable of controlling this fear. Leo III, the Isaurian, newly usurped the throne from the weak Theodosius, was a harsh, pragmatic warrior. He understood that in the open field, Byzantium had absolutely no chance against such an armada. His only hope was the walls of Theodosius, the same stone belt that a decade earlier had helped Tervel and Justinian to retake the city, and now had to save it. Leo ordered the entrance to the Golden Horn to be blocked with a giant iron chain stretched between the two shores, turning the harbor into an impregnable fortress. The city closed its gates. It held its breath and prepared for death. The emperor knew that if Constantinople fell, nothing would stop the Arab cavalry on the way to the Rhine and the Atlantic. By mid-August, the siege had closed completely. The Arabs acted with the methodicality of people accustomed to building empires. Maslama ordered a huge ditch to be dug from one sea to the other, completely cutting off the city from land. Against the city walls, an Arab wall of stone and raw bricks began to grow. So Khan Tervel was no longer just the ruler of a young state, but a factor that both empires and invaders had to reckon with. But the real test for Bulgaria and all of Europe was only just beginning. This was only part 2. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next parts, because the biggest storm in the history of Khan Tervel is just around the corner.